Can I get a roll call, please?
Jessica, do you want to go into the Pledge of Allegiance first?
Am I doing this? Oh, sorry, you're right. Call to order. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh,
Who would like to lead us today? How about you, Trustee Sperber?
I would love to. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and
and to the republic
for which
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Right.
Thank you, Trustee Sperber. All right, now we'll move on to roll call, please.
Okay, Trustee Carasali,
Here.
Trustee Carey,
Here.
Trustee Chaplin,
Good morning here.
Trustee Farahi,
Here. Good morning.
Trustee Gianoli,
Here.
Trustee Jay,
Present.
Trustee Rose,
Here.
Chair Safraza,
Here.
and Trustee Sperber.
here.
All right, so we do have a quorum, and at this time, we will move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment, Lori?
I have received no public comment and we have no chats.
Okay.
No hands raised, so I think we're good.
All right, and we'll go ahead for approval of the agenda.
Move to approve, Art Sperber.
Richard J. Second.
Okay, I think Jennifer beat you to it. So we have a motion by Trustee Sperber, second by Trustee Rose. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed for Ann? It's in my notes, Ann. It's in my notes.
Very good, Jessica.
Did I hear any opposed? Come on, we just need one. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from November 12th.
Richard J. Move to approve.
Trustee Gianoli, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Jay, second by Trustee Gianoli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the President CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to start my report with our monthly safety tip from Ted Ohm. Ted, are you ready with our safety tip?
Madam Chair, trustees, Mr. Griffin, good morning. Today, we're going to talk about a couple little Christmas items. So this time of year, more decorations start going up. Please check your electrical cords for fraying, cracks, or other signs of wear, and replace the damaged cords or have them professionally repaired. Consider replacing your open flame candles with LED flameless candles. And then, of course, the big one, Christmas tree fires. If you have a live tree this year, give the trunk a fresh cut before putting it in the tree stand. Also check the water daily. And finally, place the tree away from heater vents or other sources of heat. And we have a quick video here. Everybody can see that?
Yes, thanks, Ted.
Yes.
Yep.
Here, and this is basically in a testing lab. They use a little electric spark device to start these fires behind the trees, and then they're just going to let this run here for a little bit. You can start seeing smoke on the one on the right already, and here shortly they'll start this one on the dry tree. There it goes. And you'll see definitely how much faster this thing gets involved.
Oh boy.
It's pretty surprising. So that is my presentation, my little tips for you all today. I hope everybody has a safe and healthy Christmas.
So, well, thank you, Ted. And I think for future agendas, we got to have it on as Ted's tips.
That's all.
I look forward to your videos.
I
It's
like that.
official.
Ted's tips.
Thank you
I
very
like
much.
it. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'll continue, refer you to my monthly CEO report. Lots of good information in there and lots of detail. If there's any questions or follow up on any of that, please let me know. I would like to highlight a few things for you this month. And first, just a bit of an update on the state of our business. As we talked about at each monthly board meeting, we've done better than expected through the fall. And on average, we were 10% better than most of the rest of the country in terms of passenger activity through the terminal building, and did really well up and through the Thanksgiving holiday, at one point getting almost to 50% of normal, which honestly it would be a high watermark since the onset of the pandemic. However, significant drop off since Thanksgiving. And this week and last week, we are closer to 70% and at 70% decline year over year, which oddly enough, it puts us a little bit behind the rest of the country. Likely just a temporary function here, but there's a number of causes that I think we're all probably pretty familiar with right now, which is one, we're in a normal trough post-Thanksgiving, passenger traffic drops off, and then we will see it pick up again pre-Christmas. Christmas is on a Friday this week, so hopefully that whole week provides some lift for us, but also the ongoing spread and growth of the pandemic and the case count here in Washoe County and quite honestly everywhere. Lots of messaging coming out now from governors, mayors, public health directors, urging people not to travel. And that certainly is going to affect our business. I think we see people now making different travel decisions or delaying plans, and we fully expect to see that continue to impact us. I think we're all expecting December to be a rough month, and January with a post-New Year's holiday surge that's being anticipated could also be very rough. So not in a great place right now. Down 70% would be the low water mark since we were in the lockdown in April. So we hope to grow quickly from there, but we're also mindful that we need to be a good public partner and be careful in what we're messaging. We're not heavily promoting flights or any of the new seasonal routes right now. You know, our electeds and our leaders are asking people not to travel. And so we're in the middle, if you will, trying to work with those partners and make sure we support their messaging, trying to work with our airline partners and make sure we're doing what we can to support them as well to get through this really challenging period. And so then I will pivot to the good news, hopefully, which is what's going to happen this spring. Today, Southwest is announcing new year-round daily service from Long Beach to Reno. We're very excited about that. Long Beach has always been a good market for Reno when served by JetBlue. As I think you're all aware, JetBlue completely moved their operation out of Long Beach to LAX. Southwest picked up all 17 slots at that airport. We hoped we would be on that route map, and sure enough, we were, and deservedly so. And I am excited about that March service start. In addition to that, Southwest has also informed us they'll be adding Chicago Midway and Houston Hobby in March, along with the existing service that they have. So all eyes now on the spring. It's potentially a big rebounding time for us as we get to spring break. If the vaccine has made progress and consumer confidence is returning, you know, I think we can be optimistic about what's going to start to happen this spring. But of course, we have to get there first. I also want to note JSX started their Orange County service this last week. That's a big win, one that we were anxiously hoping for, along with their very successful Burbank service. But also, California service is very challenged right now with most of that state heading or already back in lockdown. It's going to be difficult to get good numbers. And so we're trying to keep it all in context and be mindful on that. You know, it's a challenge right now, but I really am feeling more and more optimistic about what's going to happen this spring, and we'll of course continue the conversation. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I want to thank our partners at RASC for their support of the Long Beach and their marketing support. It's a team effort, and I really think that is going to springboard us into hopefully bigger and better things with Southwest and all of our airline partners. And then the last thing, just for your monthly update that's topical. Yesterday morning, I received our approval from the FAA Airports District Office in Phoenix on the Section 163 exemption request that the authority put in for our east-west corridor at the Stead Airport. This is something that the team has been working on for quite some time with the city of Reno and with other development partners. As we know, we have a lot of business deals in the queue right now, and all of them subject to some form of NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act review by the FAA. And so being clear on what our priorities are, getting across the finish line on these is really important. This is a big one. It opens up a lot of opportunities for us. It allows the city of Reno to move forward with a utility corridor. We'll work together on an easement and really open up land for development there, as we've talked about many times. And as we talked about last month, as part of the Dermody changes, we're really working closely with the FAA on moving that environmental assessment forward. So I'm really pleased with our partners at the FAA. They're trying to help us. They're also under a lot of pressure to get work done. And so we have to have strong partnerships, and we're in very close communication with them. So while the business is challenged right now, there's also reasons for optimism and good news. And I want to try and be completely transparent on all of it, right? So good times and challenging times, but that completes my report for this month. Happy to answer any questions or talk about anything else. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes, Trustee Sperber.
I'll tell you, I heard from City of Reno yesterday afternoon with the FAA, and they are tickled just like we are on what you had approved, gotten approval from. Like you had said during our construction meeting on Tuesday, that you felt very strong about that. And, you know, welcome aboard, my friend. You've done a great job for us on getting that moving along. It's very critical to everybody in Northern Nevada. That is one of those things. Great job.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and Darren, at the FAA, that was, I think, when did we submit for that? And I mean, I don't know what you did over there, but record speed. So just want to thank, I don't know who all was involved, but just want to say thank you to all the staff that helped make this happen. What a big deal for utilities, sewer, water, infrastructure for the North Valleys. Just a big deal. So
thank you, Madam Chair, and all credit to the staff. I mean, our engineering and planning teams and Tina and her team on the development side, there's a lot of people working on all of these deals, and this one is really important. I think I've been able to help our partners at the FAA really prioritize what's most important to us, because everything can't be your number one priority. And they are really putting focus on those things that are most important to us. And this is certainly one of those. So it's great to see them get it across the finish line for us. But all credit to this team. They're doing a great job. Thank you.
thank you. And Trustee Chapman,
Yes.
did you want to announce the Placer County issues?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I just commented when Mr. Griffin was talking that the greater Sacramento area that El Dorado County and Placer County are now part of. Obviously, we go into a stay-at-home order tonight with a lot of California businesses affected. And so I'm afraid that while you've been conservative, we've been pleased with the lift into R&O. We may have another, hit with this order that's going into place for the next 3 weeks, which is not lifted if everything goes well until the night of December 31st. So it's something to watch, or maybe not. Maybe we shouldn't watch it. It's pretty it's pretty dire up here, where, we're able to have ski resorts open. We have curbside in California, again, curbside dining and at the best. And tonight our lodging properties are no longer on the California side are no longer able to take reservations through December 31.
Wow. Oh. Stay safe.
And we hit international news yesterday. Like Tahoe was featured in the Guardian. So it does indicate that obviously we have international recognition in this region. So it was good news from one sense that would make the headline, but the body of the article wasn't necessarily what we would have liked to have. So, and I expect more today. The Chronicle, I talked to the Chronicle yesterday, LA Times, they're kind of all over this. So unfortunately, I think our airport is perhaps in for another little dip.
Well, thanks for the update, Trustee. And Darren, did you have any more to add, or any other board members? Trustee Farahi, I didn't know, I saw your mic go on. I wasn't sure if you had comments.
Madam Chair, I would just add, and I think what Trustee Chaplin just talked about gets to kind of the thing we've been concerned about all fall, right? That I've been conservative, our team has been conservative, not sure what the future would bring in terms of business activity level, passenger activity level. And it feels like we're getting there now. And we probably haven't seen the bottom this month, and January and February could be pretty grim. California is a big market to us, all parts of it. And as it goes, we go as well. Of course, we have a more diverse route map than just that. But I think we should tighten our seatbelts here, but this is what we've been talking about. It's what we've been preparing for, and we are in a good position to weather a couple difficult months here. And to my earlier comments, I think it hopefully turns by March and we really start to see going the other direction. So we'll make it through.
All right. Well, moving on, I believe we're on board comments. Anybody from the board have any comments or liaison reports? Richard, did you want to give just a little report on users?
Yeah, thank you very much. We had a great meeting on Monday night. Meetings are always good, but this one, we just had some great conversation. Two things I kind of want to talk about is just the, working really together. We've got a new company on board working with the hangar tracking Thompson overhead garage door. And we're getting some really good reviews back from those people about, doing a good job there. And just kind of talked about the future. We talked about, and we're going to put it on the agenda for next meeting, will this become a CEO-led group? One thing I really related to the whole group is we haven't decided anything yet. This will be a board decision, but it's going to be my intention that no matter what happens, there will always be a board member there, whether it stays the way it is now or goes into the CEO-led group. There'll always be a liaison there. And I made my commitment both to the committee as well as Darren that I will stay on board because I've been there for 3.5 years now. We're in a good spot. Also, one other thing real quick, I'd like to get on the next agenda for the January meeting. We had a great presentation in the noise committee from Richard Brong, who's member of the noise committee, but also one of the principals over at Great Basin Aviation. He gave this presentation and I really learned a lot about what actually causes noise, what they do to mitigate noise. And I think it was one of the best presentations we've had in a long time. So Chair, I'd like to get with you and have that presentation made to the entire board because it was very, very insightful. And I think Darren will agree to that one as well. So that was about it. Thank you.
Great. And I know we don't have the committee reports anymore. So just want to thank the board for their different roles. Anybody from any other liaisons have anything to update at this time? Just an update, and I have traveled through the airport. And I do want to say just to the staff and Darren, I want to thank everyone for masking up. I know in keeping everyone safe, Darren, I got to say, went through everyone 100% compliance. And I just want to thank all of our employees for keeping us safe. And I had to be in there yesterday to sign some papers and all the staff. So I know these are hard times, but I did want to point it out. We hear all the negative, and I just wanted to thank all the staff and employees at the airport for being safe and keeping us safe through the pandemic. So, all right.
And Chair Saraza, just a quick update, obviously from the RSCDA, Charles Harris, the new CEO, did start just over 2 weeks ago. So he's hit the ground running, having meetings with community leaders and getting his feet wet in town. So if there's anyone on the board or at the airport feels he should meet with, please do pass that along. We'd be happy to ensure that we connect him with those community leaders. And for those that may have read the This is Reno article, there's some fire being dealt with as he starts his tenure, but all will be well, I think, and we'll work through the challenges, and all part of taking on a new leadership role.
All right. Thanks for the report, Danny. Any other board members have any reports this time? All right. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the electronic meetings here. So we're moving on to awards, recognitions, and items of special interest. Darren?
Madam Chair, thank you. No awards or recognitions this month.
All right, moving on. Item 5.1 is on the consent agenda. We only have one this month. Do we have any questions, or do we need to pull that item, or do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve as presented, Trustee Rose.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Rose. Who's our second?
Trustee Giannoli will second.
Trustee Giannoli is the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to resolution board memo 2012-79 and adoption of the resolution prohibiting gatherings in tenant spaces. And Darren, I'll let you take this one. And I did ask our CEO to put this on the agenda. I thought it was important for our staff during these times, for those, the hangars that and our other uses that are supposed to be for aeronautical, because of COVID related activities, that we freeze those types of events until the governor lifts his directive and our CEO feels that we're safe again. So, and Darren, I don't know who's running the ball on this one, but I'll go to Ann. Go for it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you can hear me. This agenda item asks the board to adopt a resolution prohibiting gatherings in tenant spaces for uses other than those that are allowed by the terms of the leases and that are above the indoor-outdoor limits that have been imposed by any governmental entity such as the state of Nevada, the city of Reno, or Washoe County during the term of a declared emergency. This board ratified the RTAA President CEO's declaration of emergency on April 10th, 2020. This is consistent with that ratification. Since that time, our governor has issued additional directives, most recently November 25th, 2020, as the number of cases, COVID cases have arisen. That directive that was issued on November 25th limits public gatherings to the lesser of 50 people or 25% of fire code capacity, no matter whether it's in a publicly owned or privately owned area. To address the increasing health and safety risks resulting from the increase in COVID-19 cases in Washoe County, as well as to make sure we put all tenants on notice of the RTAA's intent to comply and enforce any gathering limitations. This board is being asked to adopt Resolution 549. That resolution has two parts. The first is that it requires all gatherings on RTAA property to comply with the governor's directives. And the second is that it prohibits all gatherings for any purposes other than those expressly authorized in specific RTAA leases, including but not limited to social and holiday gatherings. A copy of the complete resolution, which is one page, is attached to the board memo, and I'm available for any questions.
Do we have any questions from the board at this time? Trustee Carey. You're on mute. Vice Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just wanted to inquire, do we have a special use permit that would cover special events as an administrative matter where these things are reviewed for the fire code, public safety, emergency services, and impacts to the operations of the airport?
I will address what we most recently did, and that is we don't have a standard procedure, but when it is asked of us to get beyond a special use, we do review for all the items that you have said, as we recently did with respect to one of the hangars on the airfield. And we do issue a special permit that specifically defines what can be done. What we're trying to do at this point is don't ask, because we're not granting.
Yeah, do we, in that process, are we including folks like the health department and REMSA and those kinds of things in your informal process?
I'll defer to Trustee or to Darren Griffin. I was not part of that piece.
I don't want to belabor this a lot, but you might review the special event permit processes of the city of Reno for good guidance as to what we may want to do. I know in Sparks, health department approval would have been a tremendous help to us on some of these events during this particular instance, because when you have a mass gathering, you certainly have to coordinate to make sure there's enough sanitation. Things like parking are a big deal. And obviously, our first priority is to maintain the safety of the airport. But just a suggestion maybe to develop something more formally so that we can address these clearly in the future.
And I just Vice Chair Carey, I did have that discussion with Mr. Griffin, and I believe it's going to come back to have a special events policy for all the reasons you're saying. But in addition to that, the cost to our staff, our public safety personnel, all the staff that have to Ann's time, everyone's time to put these together. So your point is well taken, and I believe, Mr. CEO, this is going to come back with a policy on our special events.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, points well taken. And just to confirm, the permit that was issued earlier this fall did require conformance to all public health directives, the limits on gatherings. So all of that was incorporated by reference. But this is, I certainly support this move. It's good public policy right now. It's in full support and partnership of the direction from the mayor, the governor, public health officials. Right now, it's just period. Gatherings are really not allowed, and we don't have any pending requests, just so this board is aware. We're not turning anything around here. It's just until we are fully beyond the impacts here of this situation, this is a good place for us to be, and creates an opportunity for us to put more formality around special use requests, regardless of purpose or where they come from, as they could occur on our property. So we will create that, appreciate the guidance on City of Reno and City of Sparks. I'm not afraid to copy and paste as much as possible to not reinvent the wheel here. So thank you, sir.
Thank you both.
All right, any other questions on the resolution? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion for adoption, please.
Richard J. move to adopt as presented.
Okay, Trustee Jay, move to adopt. And do we have a second?
Second, Art Sperber.
Chaplain.
Okay, trustee Chaplin is the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to the next item is item 6.2. And before we do, I believe we have a disclosure. Trustee Sperber.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to disclose that a company in which I have an ownership interest has a contract with Atkins regarding a project with RTC. I do not have financial interest in Atkins, nor do I have financial interest in the contract before us right now, 6.2. I have consulted with counsel and do not have a conflict, and therefore will be voting on this matter. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Sperber. Any questions on 6.2, or can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, motion to approve as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Carey. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Trustee Janoli. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, this is the big one, consulting services for planning study for the potential Concourse redevelopment project. Who do we have up on this? Mr. CEO?
I believe Mr. Cobb is going to present to you on this one, Madam Chair.
Is that you, Lisa?
Lisa's gonna do it.
Lisa,
All right.
and, okay.
Lisa.
I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry, Lisa.
Good morning. Yeah, my mother got really clever with all of her children's names, so we all have a strange spelling and a strange pronunciation. Good morning, Chair Safraza, trustees, staff. I'm going to share my screen. If somebody could confirm that they can see it. Can we all see that?
Yep, we can see you.
Wonderful. So I'm here today to discuss the possible approval of an award for a professional services agreement with Mead and Hunt for a detailed planning study to analyze and evaluate a potential concourse redevelopment project at the Reno Tahoe International Airport. As some background, oops, I went too far. The 2018 master plan update did compare the existing concourse facilities that we have. We have a concourse B to the south and a concourse C to the north, to the 20-year passenger forecasts that were identified in the master plan. And the 20-year passenger forecast in the master plan was that we would be reaching 5.7 million annual passengers by the end of that 20-year period. Master plan identified a number of issues and constraints, and I've just put on this slide just kind of the most critical issues that were identified. One was that while we technically have 23 gates that are with associated hold rooms for passengers and airline functions, jet bridges, and aircraft envelopes, the aircraft operations themselves are constrained to only 20 of those gates, gates C1, C2, and B2, which are closest to the concourse, the connector concourse, have extremely limited capacity either due to the size of the hold room where we've constructed tenant spaces or restrooms, or to the size of the aircraft envelope. When we bumped out the connector concourse for the consolidated checkpoint in the center, we essentially created issues with C1 and B2 that would only be, we'd only be able to use them for aircraft if we also closed the adjacent aircraft envelopes. And if a per turn gate is not available on these concourses, there's minimal to no flexibility to shift airlines around between the different jet bridges, since we do not have common use technology currently in the concourses. Pre-pandemic, our hold rooms regularly overflowed into the circulation hallway, especially on the B concourse. Hallway circulation width in our concourses is about 23 feet wide. When the slot machines are not in use and all the chairs are pushed back, that width narrows regularly whenever passengers are seated at the slot machines because there aren't enough room in our hold rooms. Airport industry standards and concourses ask for an extra wide hallway, and the master plan recommended a 30-foot width in those areas. Additionally, prior to the pandemic, and even now, We have only one available concession space in all of the concourses, and that's the first, that's next to Subway, for those who are familiar with the C concourse. In addition, the entire first floor of both concourses is fully utilized with airport administrative functions, police functions, TSA functions, and other back of the house space for our tenants. And then from a building system perspective, the concourses were built in the late 70s. They're already 40 years old. As a result, there's certain building systems that are in need of replacement or major overhaul. Facility condition assessment that was in the master plan identified issues associated with mechanical, sewer, and building systems, all needed within the next 5 to 10 years. Additionally, as with the ticketing hall, there are some wayfinding and signage issues, primarily associated with consistency of the labeling and signage, as well as some ADA sightline issues. And lastly, as many of you know, our Customs and Border Protection facility, which is off to the north of the two concourses, is separated from the building and exposes passengers to the elements whenever they deplane. It also does not have enough space to accommodate 2 international arrivals close together, which greatly hinders our ability as an airport to grow our international service. The master plan recommended the following for future concourse redevelopment. It recommended a phased construction of 2 replacement concourses, a B and a C, followed by the eventual construction of a 3rd concourse to the north, what would be Concourse Delta. The recommended dimensions for the new concourses would expand from our existing constrained 74-foot wide concourses to a larger 150 feet that would greatly increase available concession space, passenger spaces, and also provide additional capacity on the first floor for critical back of the house functions. Full redevelopment in the line with the master plan recommendation could result in 32 total aircraft gates built to design group 4 standards. Positioning those replacement concourses on either side of the existing concourses would also create a much wider separation in between the concourses that would allow for dual taxi lane movement, increasing the aircraft capacity on our aprons. Design Group 4 is a Boeing 767, is a similar aircraft for that area. That's a medium to long range wide body airliner. And while the master plan did recommend we built for what we thought would be the largest aircraft, one of the purposes of this design study, this planning study, is to relook at that and determine if maybe we want to create more flexible spaces for smaller and larger aircraft fleet mix. Additionally, the master plan recommended that we demolish the existing customs facility and incorporate it into one of the 2 new concourses and construct a customs that would be able to process 400 passengers per hour, greatly increasing our ability to grow international service. This master plan recommendation that you see was capable of serving growth beyond the forecasted 5.7 million annual passengers and could be extremely flexible in terms of future interior reconfigurations. So in order to better inform decision-making and to right-size the future concourse redevelopment, staff is ready to begin a detailed planning study for a potential concourse redevelopment project. Funding for this study was secured under PFC application number 14. The purpose of the detailed planning study is to validate and quantify existing issues and identify a number of feasible and reasonable solutions. The study would conduct a much deeper dive than the master plan did. It would fully vet out whether there may be value in keeping some of the existing concourses through targeted renovation or expansion, or whether building from scratch is the best long-term option. This study will provide numerous opportunities for stakeholder outreach, and the final deliverable would be an accurate statement of work that can be used to initiate a design solicitation. Oops, sorry. As part of the request for qualifications process, staff identified a preliminary scope for the detailed planning study. This is the scope that was included at the advertisement for the request for qualifications. At the time, we envisioned that the study would include a detailed needs analysis that looked at passenger airline concession needs, as well as an analysis of the needs, the facility needs necessary to accommodate the CBP relocation and relocation or expansion of our airport administrative spaces. The study would also look at an analysis of renovation, expansion, and replacement options, construction and operational phasing plans so that we could keep as much of the concourses open as possible during future construction, as well as the critical financial plan that would be necessary to support concourse redevelopment. As mentioned earlier, the study is funded with passenger facility charges. So as a result, staff initiate a qualifications-based selection process early in the calendar year. The FAA does require that PFC contracts and agreements for architectural and engineering services be awarded through a qualifications-based selection where fees are only established after a negotiations process when the most qualified team is selected. A request for qualifications was advertised on March 2nd, pretty much right as the pandemic was hitting the Northern Nevada community. And due to that pandemic, all solicitations were required to be submitted electronic only. We received 9 statements of qualifications by the April 9th deadline, and each of those statements of qualifications included firms with extensive national and international airport experience. A selection committee identified a shortlist on April 20th, and that selection committee consisted of both staff and trustees. And on April 20th, we did meet by Zoom. We went over our individual evaluations, and we identified 4 of the original 9 to advance for interviews. I'm going to just take a quick moment and mention that this was probably the largest selection committee that I've ever worked with since I've been here. We had a very diverse number of participants that came from different backgrounds, and that created quite a few opportunities for the selection committees to have some very valuable debate and discussion, which was used to feed into the scope and fee negotiation process. So that was extremely helpful. The selection committee did choose to delay those interviews with the final 4 for several weeks because at the time we were hoping that the pandemic impacts wouldn't be quite as significant as they turned out to be. We really wanted to have face-to-face interviews with the 4 teams, but as it was, we chose to have those interviews on June 4th due to the restrictions to travel at that time for some of these states. We limited the in-person attendance for the vendors to only 3 people. Each of the 4 groups sent 3 people to the interviews. We also limited the number of staff in the room. And then Zoom participation was unlimited and they could have as many representatives as they wanted. The selection committee was able to reach unanimous agreement on June 4th on the top 2 teams. And we all agreed that those teams were highly qualified and experienced and capable of delivering what we wanted out of the study. In hopes of reaching consensus, the selection committee conducted one more round of interviews on June 19th with the top 2 teams. At that point, recognizing where we were in the pandemic, we did not allow for any in-person attendance. It was all done via Zoom. And after those final interviews, the team led by Mead and Hunt was identified by the selection committee as the preferred team by majority vote. Mead and Hunt was selected based on the qualifications and requirements that were stipulated in the RFQ, including their extensive and relevant experience at Reno, their experience on similar projects at other small and medium airports, and their commitment to dedicating significant time and resources to our project. This slide here shows the selection results of each evaluation round. And then upon identifying Mead and Hunt as the preferred team, staff began the very long process of developing a final scope of work for this complicated study and negotiating the associated fee. As I mentioned, one of the benefits of this selection committee process is that it did give the project team a much greater insight into the necessary components of the study and the type of information that was going to be needed.
Melissa, can you just tell us on the selection committee, did we have board participation? I believe we did.
We did. We had 3 trustees that participated, Trustee Carey, Trustee Farahi, and Trustee Rose, I believe,
Okay,
and I
great.
apologize if I missed one.
I actually did not participate. I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
Okay. Scope development began with a large internal stakeholder meeting and site visits in July. The scope development and subsequent fee negotiation process was extremely iterative and collaborative. We did get key input from stakeholders as well as departments, and the final detailed scope of work has been included with the board memo for the board. Major professional services included architectural, aviation planning, financial planning, civil engineering, structural engineering, mechanical, electrical, as well as cost estimating and stakeholder outreach. Major components of the study include project management, stakeholder coordination, a baseline, facility investigation, facility assessment services, alternates analysis, and then a selection of the preferred development. And as mentioned, the final basis of design report is going to be focused on the first major construction project. The selected team is, as mentioned, is led by Mead & Hunt. They have over 35 offices nationwide, and they've worked at over 600 airports, including Reno. They do also have a full services aviation division, which is going to be extremely helpful with all the moving pieces of this project. The project itself will be managed out of Mead & Hunt's Portland, Oregon office. Mead & Hunt is leading a sub-consultant team with extensive proven and award-winning airport experience, including experience at Reno. This slide here shows the main focus areas of each of those consultants, and they do include Gensler, Langevin Brown, Atkins North America, ICF, Thornton Tomasetti, Cumming, Studderford Technical Solutions, Aerosystems Engineering, as well as Wood Rogers. Some of the study team's projects that are similar in scope and size to this detailed planning study: the Terminal Improvement Program study at Glacier Park International Airport, Concourse A extension or Project Elevate at Gerald Ford International, bond feasibility studies and CIP planning for Salt Lake City International, Concourses A and B renovations at Tulsa, as well as the Austin Bergstrom International expansion and improvement project. Total cost of the consultant services associated with the PSA is $2,029,680. We have approved for collection under PFC application 14 $1.98 million. The remaining $49,680 can be supplemented by operating revenues until at a future date we recoup the additional $49,680 by either amending the existing PFC 14 or within a future PFC application. All components of this study are eligible for PFC reimbursement. And this is the recommended motion if the board would consider approving this PSA. Chair Sefaraza, concludes my presentation. I'm available for any additional questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions from the board? Sorry, I don't see anybody. Just two questions, quick questions, Lisa. You said they're out of Portland. Are they going to have local folks here? Anyone locally doing the work on this?
Yes, trustee. There will be Atkins, which has local participation, and they're going to be quite a bit of the boots on the ground work, as well as Wood Rogers would be their other primary local component. Mead & Hunt does not have any current local staff.
Okay, but local people will be employed.
Correct.
Okay, I think that's going to be important on all these projects in the upcoming months, the jobs. Just another question to Lisa, and this may be off the wall. I know this group was the original group who did our master plan, and they had actually recommended that our CONRAC go in a different location. And so I'm just wondering if this is something on the concourse and how it all interacts with the airport, if that's something they should look at in this agreement up front. Is there a way to do that? I know that the CONRAC's coming back to us in potentially in January, February, I'm not sure, but I think it was all interconnected with the concourse, what we're doing and the whole scope and master plan. So I don't know if it's a dumb question. I just want to know if that can be looked at before the board makes that that next step determination on the Conrack facility?
Let me see if I can answer that. So currently, as part of our negotiated scope with Mead and Hunt, they're aware of the very potentially large number of, I'm going to say, passenger interactive projects we might have in the queue, whether that's the roadway work in the front of the building, whether that's the Conrack or the ticketing hall and their work itself. And as part of their scope, they have been tasked with making sure all of those pieces work together as seamlessly as possible. So at this point, what they've been tasked is making sure that these projects partner together and don't conflict with each other. They haven't been asked specifically to reevaluate the rental car location or size, but that is something that potentially we could kind of bump up into their contract. That would probably require an amendment if they were going to do that. But I do know there's a large workshop in January, and I might want to defer to CEO Griffin in terms of what we're going to talk about with the rental car in January. But he is leading an internal effort to make sure that we are building the right rental car facility in the right location currently.
Thank you, Alyssa. Madam Chair, if I may, great question. And to your point, all of these things are connected. We're one airport and passengers experience us as a single airport, and they don't know the difference between our work in a concourse or in a rental car center or in a ticket hall. And so as we process and work through these large projects, it is important that we're looking at them as a single experience and a single passenger experience, if you will. And as Alyssa referred to my work on the Conrack, we'll be bringing to you a lot of information in January at the workshop is what our present plan is. Part of the Conrack effort has been me trying to get up to speed on how we got to where we're at today, what the decisions were, what the process was that we used to get here, understanding the rental car needs and how it connects to our ticket hall or our efforts here on the concourses, and really just kind of poking and prodding at some of the assumptions and are we landing in the right place, and are we thinking of our airport as a single experience and accounting for all of our needs for all of our customers at every part of that experience. And so I'm still working through that with my staff. I have some outreach planned for Trustees Sperber and Carey, who've been very involved in the Conrack, and to get alignment there as well. And I cannot tell you right now where we're going to land on that, but I will tell you that it is certainly my job to make sure we're looking at all of these efforts as a single airport experience. And what we do here with Mead and Hunt on the gates and the concourses is connected to the ticket hall, which we will talk about here in a short while. And what we do on the land side, whether it's with the rental cars or parking or Uber or Lyft or whatever, all of those are connected to our customers. And it's important that we look at it that way. So I have an IOU here to bring back to you more information on the Conrack, but please rest assured, we're looking hard at it right now.
Yeah, and Darren, would this be helpful? I guess I thought about this overnight. Would it be helpful, since this is the same group who recommended a different location in our master plan for the Conrack, and I'm not trying to throw dynamite here, is just this a huge decision for them to just look this over, the proposed new location, how it interconnects, again, with the ticketing hall, I think you said it. Would that be beneficial, or do you think that you've got a comfort level and on your internal review where these guys don't need to look at it again?
Madam Chair, it's potentially helpful is what I would say. And my team will tell you that I've been poking pretty hard at the early planning work that preceded our entering into a business deal with Conrack Solutions. And did we look at all of our land side needs? Did we look at what the master plan said, where we would locate a Conrack? Have we accounted for our parking needs and our TNC needs and our private vehicle parking. There's a lot of different ways that vehicles access our facility and that pedestrians access our facility. And we are land constrained on the land side. When you kind of come back to the 30,000 foot level, it's going to be tight here in the years ahead. We're kind of boxed in by a number of big features. And so how we develop that land side area is really important. And it's really important that we look at it in its entirety and not just the needs of any one customer. Although our rental cars are a really important customer and a really important line of business. And so it is entirely possible we will need some help with that to kind of firm up that early planning, because these are long-term decisions. It's a 30-year decision on the CONRAC. It's a $200 million investment from our business partners. And so, you know, to your point, it is a big call to make. We will definitely make it. And I would say it's a solid maybe here as to whether we need Mead and Hunt to help us with that, or some other firms working with them. But we also want to move with speed here, and that a lot of good work is being done on the early design of the CONRAC. I think we're learning a lot about what's going to work here. And then ultimately it may just be a question of fine tuning the site selection. So I hope I'm answering your question. I'm dodging it a little bit, but it's a great question and I am working on it.
Yeah, I think for me, and I don't know if we could do this, a question for Ann, just to have that flexibility, is if there was a change in the CEO felt it was appropriate for Mead and Hunt to just look at this again with a new location. And I'm sorry, I kind of wish we had done that when we switched locations, to just have them circle back. Just the flexibility in the contractor, if it would have to come back to us. And again, I've let the CEO make that decision, but would that have to come back to the board, or is that something that could be looked at, or a contract amended?
Oh, I'll have to take a look at it.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I will be having that conversation with our purchasing and contracts as well. So what our flexibility is, whether it's this contract or another planning contract we might have, but where can we piggyback on something that already exists to help us out to get really good clarity that we need here.
Yeah, and if we need to have a special meeting to approve something like that, because I know we're trying to get at record speed, I'm good with it. Because it's such a big decision. So I just want to get a comfort level. And I know I'm going to be relying on a lot too from the expertise of Trustee Sperber and Vice Chair Carey on this as well. So look forward to their input. I just want to make sure we're giving you all the tools in the toolbox to be able to evaluate that decision, because it's a big one, and the placement of it is huge. That's a huge decision. So wasn't trying to throw a curveball here. I just wanted to have the flexibility with them, because we did, and a lot of this predates some of the board members, we did spend a lot of time on that master plan, and you know, had several meetings with Mead and Hunt and gotten everyone's input. So it just might be nice for them to do a circle back with them. So any other comments, questions from board members?
This is Art. I'd like to make a couple of comments. You know, this whole discussion, we had a very in-depth on Tuesday, the interface of the master plan versus a specific. It's some of the reasons I like having this consultant actually doing the specific project, that they do understand how this fits within our whole system. And actually staff has been great of getting involved in this Butterfield, of trying to get involved in these kind of things, because the interaction of these things, one of the things I brought up is we don't want to build something in 2 blocks. It started looking some of these things that we could see some very good growth over the next 30 years. Incredible. Aaron brought up some great things at the financial meeting on Tuesday, of just looking at some of the things which would change, and being able to use in that center area is so critical to us, right? That feeds up to the thing. So this interface is, like you say, a project. So we had quite a bit of discussions on this Tuesday. I know that Darren is looking at those, and I know Ms. Butterfield is looking at those things, how this affects. I know our engineering is looking at cost of moving things. So some of these things going on. I think we even have a meeting Friday looking at with Sean and I invited on more things. So it's kind of good, and it's critical and a great discussion, Ms. Perez, of bringing this up, because it is something that we've got to keep looking at. And it's some of the reason of that we don't do the wrong decisions in some of these things. I look at an LAX, and my God, as you go through that horseshoe area, any of us that live at LAX know, drives you crazy, and things they've had to do in the last few years to be able to still run it through there. They've moved a lot of things out of that horseshoe, and then there's just not enough land on some of these airports to do it right. So the interface of planning, and I'm used to that, working as a regional planning commissioner and then local. There are things of these interfaces, and one of the things I'm glad that we're really looking at some of these areas.
Yeah, and I think at the expansion too, just looking at the concourse, and again, thank you, Lissa, and what we're looking at, and then going to be the future demand for parking too. And I think parking is a premium for any airport, and that accessibility for parking. So I'm just glad we're looking at it in its totality. And I know I apologize to my colleagues here. I just want to make sure we're making the appropriate decisions as it interconnects with the concourse and the terminal expansion. So, and I'm glad to hear that we are looking at it in its totality. So thank you, Trustee Sperber, for the update. Any other questions? Okay, I'll look for a motion. Trustee Sperber, I'll go to you.
I'd love to. Move to approve. I think it's the right decision for us. I think it's the right firm. They've got the local contacts in it. So I make that motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Sperber, and I think I heard a second from Vice Chair Carey.
Second, Madam Chair, thank you.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see Ann's giving me the stink eye, so I stayed on the agenda, and I did. Okay, moving right along. We are going to go to the next agenda item is review and discussion of the CEO's goals and performance measures. And before you start, Darren, I just wanted to, Vice Chair Carey and I had asked Darren to come back with a template. And I know in the past we had the compensation committee, and I know our CEO is new, and I know all the board wanted to weigh in on those goals. That's very important to us. So Darren came up with some recommendations for goals, which I thought were excellent, and Vice Chair Carey and I had made some additions, but and I'll let Darren move forward here. I just want to give the trustees some background on that, and today is for the trustees to give input as well on those goals. If you feel appropriate for additions, adding on to them. So I didn't want the board to feel that other trustees weren't involved in this process, because today's the day to put your input in for our CEO. So with that, Miss Ann, go for it.
Madam Chair, this agenda item asks the board to set the president CEO's goals and performance measures together with the weight goals for fiscal year 2021. Mr. Griffin's contract requires the board to set annual goals and to base any bonus on how those goals were achieved. Mr. Griffin's entitled to a bonus of up to 10% of his base salary. That bonus would be discussed at the end of this fiscal year. The bonus is discretionary, but it is important to echo what Chair Sefaraza said that the board be clear with the president CEO as to the direction he is to go during his tenure. I'll let Mr. Griffin walk through the direction he believes these goals, if approved, would lead the organization to. And then I'd ask that you as a board discuss the same as Chair Sefaraza has talked about, and at the end, approve a set of goals, measures, and weights after you've finished your discussion. And I'll turn it over now to Mr. Griffin.
And before we get started, just one other thing, before Darren gets started, I don't know how the board, if you guys want to go through this bullet point by bullet point, or if you just want, that could be timely, or if you just want to look at the categories and add your input. I'm assuming everyone's had the chance to review. Look for some direction from the board, whether you want to go through those line by line. Don't all speak at once.
I do think Trustee Chair Sefaraza, sorry, that Mr. Griffin was kind of going to give an overview before he moves back to the board.
Thank you. Sure.
Great.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'll just preface it a little bit. I was not intending to go line by line unless the board would like me to do that. I assume you've all read it. There's a fair amount of detail here. I was going to talk a little bit about the process because this looks different from previous CEO goal sets that you have approved, which were tied directly to the strategic plan. And I appreciate the importance of the strategic plan. And you'll see in the 5 goals that I constructed here, there is a direct connection to the strategic plan, the various strategic plan priorities that each goal supports and is connected to. But I also felt it was important to write a set of goals that are applicable to the year we're living in. And a strategic plan is an overarching long-term plan and can't really speak to the specific challenges that we face at any given time. And I tried to do that with this goal set. I've listened to the priorities that you all have articulated to me as the chair and vice chair from my very first day have been clear on priorities, and I tried to account for that. I also tried to account for the pandemic, which no strategic plan could have accounted for, and the amount of time it's dominating for all of us. And certainly in my CEO role, I work on that every day, and my team works on it every day. And I want to just emphasize to you, this is certainly there's a contractual requirement here. There's a bonus requirement that has to be discussed. But when I write goals like these, it is the direction of the organization that I believe I'm hearing from you. And what I'm working on, my team is working on, it's really important that we have alignment. So I wrote the 5 goals. I added 5 kind of measurable items to them. My intent would be after receiving your feedback and firming up the goal set, to provide a report to you at the end of the fiscal year, end of June, early July, that kind of reports out on how did I do? How did we do? Where are we making progress? Where did we fall short? And then ultimately you can decide what you think that success looks like. To me, there's a lot of art here. There's as much science as I could put in it, but a lot of the CEO role is also around people and the progress we're making on people. So I'll stop there. I'd love to hear feedback, questions, things you'd like to see changed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. So I'll go to the board. I know this is very important. So I'll start with, sorry, don't raise. Okay, Trustee Jay.
Thank you very much. Darren, you've done a fantastic job. The committee work that we've done so far, I've just been ecstatic. I mean, I think we're making a lot of progress. I'm looking at this and, it's very detailed. I'm a numbers person, okay? I like to see measurable stuff. It's really hard. Some of the stuff I look at, I know we're in such an unusual situation right now with COVID. Who would have thought a year ago we would be where we are today? When I look at something, how does the entire board agree on something that isn't subject to real numbers? Just for a gross example, increased passenger count by X. Well, you either did or didn't, and here's the numbers. Okay, not that we're going to use that specific one, but I'm just kind of looking for something that I can really sink my teeth into and really quantify which way we go on it. And that's just my opinion, and that's just kind of the way I look at it. But just being the numbers person I am, I just want to throw my 2 cents worth in.
Can I ask just follow up on that, Trustee Jay?
Yes.
Just because I do think the pandemic makes that a little more difficult. But
Absolutely.
how about tying that somehow to the budget? And how he's done such an amazing job on the budget with our team. He's actually—
I think that's a fantastic idea because, yeah, we have adopted to what we're going through right now. Right. And I think we, board, staff, Darren has done a tremendous job in that. So I think something like that would be very helpful and beneficial. And I would be all for something like that because, you know, our revenue is a little bit higher than expected. Our expenses are down. That is leadership. That is management.
And I also think, just to point out on that, I think it's going to be too hard and unfair to our new CEO to tie anything on flights. I mean,
I agree 100%. And that's the problem. Are we looking short-term, long-term? Long-term will be easier to do. Right. And I certainly want to recognize CEO Darren for what he's done. I don't want to shortcut that at all. But I think it's almost that we say we have like a COVID documentation, then an after COVID, because we're going to get out of this.
Right.
But meanwhile, what do we do to, reward those who have been working so hard, which has been everybody?
And just one other point on the financial side. Darren has kept the vice president's position open. So he has done 2 jobs, and Darren, that was one thing I was going to mention, and I'm sorry, not trying to steal your thunder, Trustee Jay, but what are the savings on that position, Darren? Because I would like that reflected. Do we know?
It's in big round numbers, salary and benefits, that was $300,000 a year. And we have removed that position from the budget, Madam Chair. It's not my intent to fill that. I've formed our new executive team. It's, I think, the right leadership model for an airport this size, and it reflects a modern approach to leadership. So we are realizing that cost savings immediately.
So I think that just ties into what you're saying, Trustee Jay, the budget, the numbers, and I don't know what the appropriate language is there, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I think as a group, we can come up with stuff like this because I just think we're in such unusual times right now, but we have to still do what we have to, both on rewarding the people who are working extremely hard, but also, follow what our, guidelines are. And I mean, like I said, who would have thought we'd be here? A year ago, if I said we'd be doing this, you guys would probably commit me to the insane asylum or something.
And I see Ann's hands raised, so I better go to our legal counsel.
To address the issue about the budget, that is one of the specific measures in the first goal, which talks about managing within the operating budget and developing and implementing budget austerity measures as conditions demand. So you sort of have that captured in the language that's already here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe Trustee Jay, we give more of weight to that. I mean, that's subject to debate because I feel like our CEO has done an excellent job of our budget, the whole team. I mean, it takes a team effort, but
I think we almost need to kind of modify, just kind of massage this to deal with the COVID situation that we're in, realizing that we're going to get out of this and we're going to go back to more traditional ones, but just want to make sure that we reward the people who are working, we keep our principles in line, that, we acknowledge all the successes that we're getting, which we are getting a lot, so I'm not, I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to shortchange everybody. I want to reward, I want to take care of everybody who's been just giving their life to and heart and their soul and everything into this. And that's why we're in the situation we are, a good situation right now.
Madam Chair, if I may, Trustee Jay, just on the timing, just to be clear, this is the goal set for the fiscal year that began last July 1st, or for me on August 3rd. And so these are the goals through June 30th. I will owe you a new goal set next summer. Normally, I think in a typical set of CEO goals, you'd have a whole section on finance, and it would be section number 1 to the point you're making. I kind of replaced it with the COVID section here because it's dominating everything and certainly dominates our financial abilities right now. So I tried to embed some of those financial stewardship requirements in goal number 1, while also accounting for the tremendous amount of time that goal number 1 is taking in terms of COVID. I hope Goal number 1 is completely different next July, and I can share with you a goal that's all about our finances and goals around metrics and growing ourselves out of a pandemic. But right now it's kind of a hybrid. But to your point, in the next goal set, it's hopefully gone, and we're already. I hope it's gone.
I agree.
But it's all about recovery at that point.
Yeah. And thank you. And for the record, great job. I've really enjoyed working with you since August. I think we've made a lot of good stride forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Vice Chair Carey, I'm sorry.
Just as a different perspective, a little bit to the quantitative, what you can measure discussion. I was really pleased with these goals because they include much more the art of the profession that Darren's engaged in. As a CEO, I felt we were judging too much by numbers. And in the last CEO's contract, it was all or nothing. And unfortunately, I think that moved the CEO in the past from not being able to use the art that so many of these discussions and outcomes we need to truly measure. And that's why I was so pleased to see the word leadership, which is a form of art in leading an organization, included in so many of these. And so I thought it was a much better balance than just having quantification, that we be able to look at the results that have come from the art of leadership. And I think that Darren's to be commended for the approach that he's taken on these. And I very much support somewhat of a shift away from just a numeric counting of widgets to really measuring the value of some of these areas, particularly when you're a new person and he's challenged in a very difficult national emergency to build a culture. And I can't thank him enough for presenting these goals in such a way that we're allowed to judge the art of this profession, not just the numbers. And so I just wanted to not speak against Richard's thoughts on quantification, because we do need to measure things, and he's right on that. But I do think this approach allows us to talk about the art of leadership, which I think is going to be very important to shift our organizational culture. And that's all I had.
Great point. And I'm totally, I think it's collaborative as a group. We throw our opinions out there, we listen, we form it, and whatever we come up with at the end is something that we've all talked about. So great point, Sean. Thank you.
You're right, Richard.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go right ahead. Trustee Chapman.
Good morning. I wanted to agree with both Richard and Sean, both trustees, from a standpoint of the measurables and the metrics that go with it, and then also be able to the art. Trustee Carey is really, that was eloquent and spot on as far as I'm concerned. I think that there has been art and finesse. And I don't know whether, going forward, it will just be interesting, because I think back with Ms. Mora and some of the metrics that got in her way in terms of optimum, bonuses. And it was, there was angst over that, because we felt that she was not in control of those, and that to some extent, we understand that you want to take control, but when all planes are basically not flying, what can you do? Crisis management may always be in this, more than just pandemic, but I would say crisis management occurred from the moment Darren said yes to this job, from a standpoint of not having a complete senior management team, and some of the different, and a couple of presidential visits, and all those kind of things that got thrown into the mix. It's been one crisis management after another. So I don't know whether that ever goes away, Darren. When we're looking at your goals, there may be a section that is somewhat just kind of sits out there to see whether or not that plays into your goals or not. I don't know whether an airport ever gets to walk away from a crisis for a whole year. I mean, give it a try, give it a go, and we'll see how that goes. And maybe that should be a metric as well. But anyway, I did want to let you know that Mr. Michael Bell checked in with me a few days ago to see how Mr. Griffin was doing. And I just had to thank him again for finding and helping us recruit the best talent for the best time and for the best airport.
Amen. Thank you.
I totally agree with that comment there.
Trustee Gerber.
Yes, I totally agree with that comment. I'm telling you, from what we looked at and what we were trying to do, a selection and everything, and the stress from our side there, we've moved it over to you, and you've done a great job with some of the stress. And you can see a lot of more happier faces around here.
We lack
So
happy faces. That's my goal. Thank you.
Exactly.
Trustee Rose.
Well, most of what I was going to say has already been said, so I'll just quickly say that I agree with everything everyone has said. I'm definitely a more measurable kind of a person. You complete the project, whether it's a document or a building, it got done or it didn't, and it's cut and dry. But certainly appreciate Trustee Carey's sentiments on the art of the profession. I do think that we need to have a lot of flexibility. It's amazing how much COVID has forced us to stretch our brains to think outside of our normal boxes, and this is one of them. I agree that we have to provide more flexibility this year. One, because it's Darren's first year, so he has a team to put together and he has a lot of things to do that would normally already be completed. And two, because of COVID and its challenges. But I do really look forward to the next one that we do coming up in August, where we can have a combination of measurable and the art of the profession goals on here. But I think for now, this is detailed, and I love that it's Darren's vision, and I am at this point in full support.
Trustee Caroselli, did you have any feedback on the goals?
No feedback.
Okay. Trustee Giannoli?
No, I don't want to be redundant, but I agree. And I think the fact that this is for the 2021 fiscal year, what was presented to us makes a lot of sense. We've already passed a lot of it and we're sort of living in this world, and I appreciate what Darren has brought forward. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Any other input from the board or modifications, additions? I do think, I do like Trustee Jay's suggestion and of adding something in regards to the budget. I think, Ann, you said, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to amend some language, but I certainly think it should be reflected, that savings in that position. I mean, basically doing two people's jobs, I think. But just to say, is the chair this year, I just dealing with Darren, and I think the culture, a big issue for this board was the culture of the organization. And in such a short time, the culture, I believe, I was in there yesterday, and I think Trustee Sperber said it well, can't be understated, the smiles on people's faces. And that means a lot to me, Darren, and the culture of the organization and our employees, because really it takes a team to get all of this done. And so I would just say, when we're looking at one of the things, and I don't know how we do this, when we're looking at the compensation, especially the confidential employees this year, that we reward the whole team because they're the ones who took the furloughs and the cuts. And I think it's a team effort. So I was just thinking that through in my mind. I know that doesn't come till later on, but I think when we're looking at your package, I'd like to see the confidential employees, our rank and file, to ways we can bring them back and appreciate everything they're doing. And part of your leadership, Darren, the furloughs and the cuts that they've taken, But it truly is a team. And so thank you for the culture and everything you're doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, all of you, for the feedback. It is important to me. I appreciate you giving me a little bit of leeway here in year one. And on the metrics, I hear you loud and clear. And I will try and, as we report out on how we're doing here next summer, I'll try and give you those metrics that you can decide then, is that what you were looking for? As I report out what success looks like or partial success, I'll tie it as much as I can to data. Some of it is baked in data, and we'll be able to look at some of the results at that point. And then I think that will help frame up what are the right metrics that I should be tied to in the second fiscal year, along with the art of the profession, and balance it out a little bit more. But I appreciate all of the feedback here and through 4 months. It's been an exciting ride, and I think we're making great progress, and I'm enjoying it every day.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the, and I just want to make sure we're doing this right. And they are weighted, the goals, so we're going to keep the weighting the same. I believe I haven't heard any changes from the board. Trustee Jay, here's your chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace. If
Nope,
not,
I'm good. Let's move forward. We've had good discussion on this.
okay, great.
So I will make the motion to move forward as presented.
All right, so we have a motion by Trustee Jay. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Second by Trustee Rose. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm sorry, Trustee Farahi, I'm assuming you didn't have anything to add.
No, thank you. Didn't want to add my voice unnecessarily, but I agree with the comments that were shared.
Sorry about that. It's hard with the Zoom. I didn't see anyone. If you need to get me, just raise your hand.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we'll go to,
Wait, Chancellor Ferrazza, could you ask if anybody's opposed?
is
Gotcha.
anyone opposed? Dang it. I almost made it.
Not a streak.
So, I'm sorry, and my computer just went out again. So Ann, you're gonna have to help me with the next one. Okay, we don't see any opposed. Can we go to the next agenda item? Ann, can you pull that up for me?
Yes. The next agenda item is agenda item 6.5, which is the adoption of resolution 548, amending resolution number 544, a resolution adopting an update to policy number 600-007 on the financial incentives for airline and dedicated cargo carriers, and amending the current budget to add $200,000 in fuel tax funds for the purpose of expansion and or attraction of air service at the Reno Tahoe International Airport.
And so just question for the board, did you guys want a presentation on this? Wasn't sure if finance saw this or not.
We saw finance and I was.
Presentation.
Okay, did anyone have any questions?
No, but this on the finance, I sat in on it and was able to look at it from the outside. And I'll tell you what a great job our guys did on this, putting this together. And it actually led to some of the things that we were thinking in construction, and some of these things on the planning and, long term. What a great job our crew is doing on this. I want to compliment them. I think quite a bit of us saw that presentation. I don't know if others want to see it, but I sure was impressed with the detail and the real looking. What a great job, guys.
Yeah, I just follow up with what Trustee Sperber's had to say. Trish and Hassan, you guys did a fantastic job. Very detailed, being the numbers person that I am. I was very impressed. And I think it's the right direction to go.
This is Nat. Move to approve.
All right, we have a motion and by Trustee Caroselli. Do we have a second?
Richard J. I'll
Second,
second.
Art.
Give it to Art.
Either way.
We have a second I'm seeing the presentation, echo what everyone said. Great job to everyone. Tina, San, Trish, everybody. Thank you so much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I need the next agenda item. I'm sorry, it's down.
Next agenda item is the final presentation on the RTAA ticketing hall planning study.
Good morning, Chair Seferaza, Trustees, staff, Melissa Butterfield, Manager of Planning and Environmental, and I'm here to do the final update on the ticketing hall improvements planning study. I'm going to turn to either Art or Lori and ask for their help. This presentation is going to be a dual presentation between me and our prime consultant on the study, Max Hirschenau. I'm hoping you can find him in the list of presenters.
Yes, I did see, I see Damon at Mead and Hunt, but I don't see Max. Do we know what he logged in under?
Hold on, let me try.
And if he's there, could he raise his little blue hand? That way I could find him. There we go.
Do we need a presentation on this one? You guys, I'm just gonna go straight to the board. Unless staff has a burning desire to present it. I think most of us have seen it.
Yes.
But I'll defer to the board. Anybody want the presentation?
Have there been any changes since the last time we met?
To answer your question, Trustee Rose, yes, we have some additional information to present to the board, primarily associated with some final refinements to the preferred alternate. We've also put together final cost estimates to include cost estimates, and staff would like to make a recommendation on next steps. So that would be the new information.
So why don't we get a presentation on the new information?
Yeah, just skip to that.
Skip to that, Lissa.
Sure.
Need a few moments. No worries.
Give me just 1 second and I'm going to advance to the final slides in the presentation. All right, share screen. We did finalize the basis of design report. Max Hirschenau's team was able to put together quite a number of new renderings that is in the full report if anyone would like to look at it at a later date. I wanted to leave you with at least one image of what the view of the new ticketing hall would look like. This is a position from the airline counters. If you can see it, showing to the new facade of the building and what that improved line of sight area could potentially look like. And then let me go to our revised cost estimates. As part of the finalization of the preferred alternate, we did ask Max Hirschenau's team to look at a number of additional facility improvements that were added late, so that has costs that caused the construction estimates to go a little higher. The preferred alternate for the full building expansion and all of the associated site work, the new construction estimate is $12.275 million. We did add two significant new components to this. One is a roof replacement of the oldest portions of the roof over the ticketing hall. That adds $1.175 million to the construction cost estimates. In addition, we're adding a replacement of an air handler that is not functioning properly. It actually serves the skywalk, not the ticketing hall, but it does have some close proximity to the ticketing hall. The cost of replacing that and relocating that in a better location for facilities ongoing maintenance is about $104,000. So that increases our base construction cost to $13.5 million. We looked at 2 additional alternates. One was completely replacing all of the HVAC and upgrading the HVAC in the entire sky bridge. That would cost nearly $650,000, as well as what it would cost to potentially upgrade all the design finishes and design with more expensive architectural and aesthetic features for $1.4 million. We decided that those are things that we can keep in reserve should we choose to proceed at a later date, but staff is not recommending we go forward at this time with the 15.5 construction cost estimate. In terms of next steps.
Melissa, can you just, I'm sorry, can you repeat that staff is not recommending?
Yes, we are not recommending that we do a full HVAC upgrade on the sky bridge at the cost of $650,000. And we are recommending that we do design the ticketing hall improvements essentially to the level they are now in terms of the expense of finishes, and we don't do a high upgrade on those expense finishes. That would add additional $2 million. If I shoot to, yeah.
Can we just get information on that, like the finishes? I know the cost, but it would be, I would like to know what that difference is, because this is the door to our airport. So how it looks, I think those things are important. I just want to know what those differences are, and you can send that to me offline. I'm fine. But what was the decision? Why not on the HVAC system? What's the age of that system?
Well, we have. I'm going to make a presumption, and maybe this is a wrong presumption, that most, if not all, of the trustees have walked through that sky bridge during the summertime.
Yeah.
If you have, you know it's essentially a hot box. It can be very uncomfortable once you leave the parking garage and you go into that. That's an area that is has been extremely difficult for us to keep at a good, cool temperature to match the rest of the terminal building. We have looked at that in the past in terms of putting improvements in there to keep it colder. It's a very expensive upgrade for not a lot of passengers in a pass-through space. So from a value engineering standpoint, we decided that was something to hold in reserve, primarily, and this slide here shows it, primarily because we're trying to keep under a $20 million total price tag. We could still design that work as part of future ticketing hall, but keeping it as an alternate base bid item might be financially a smarter decision in order to keep the total cost of the project under 20 million. We do still have room, though, as you can see on this slide, to potentially add that back in as an alternate price.
And I mean, with the new administration coming in, potentially those windows or upgrades in that area that would make it cooler. Yeah, I'm glad we have that as a separate, because there may be funding that comes in for renewable energy, those types of initiatives. And I think Trustee Farahi, you were big on this too, on the solar and what other airports are doing in regards to, you know, solar panels, those different types of renewable initiatives.
Correct.
But the windows in there, I don't know, maybe something could be done.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. You know, I would just add to this that this is really just basically an ROI discussion, that, you know, that's a nice to have to be able to condition the space and the connector. Typically you spend less than 30 seconds in that space as we transition through it, and you're in and out of unconditioned space in the garage. I think what we've choked at is the estimate of $650,000 for that. I think we would want to look at other options, as you suggested, through, you know, windows or other systems, or see the pencil get sharpened down the road and make that a little bit more affordable, because that is just a really high price tag for a small space that is occupied for a very small amount of time. So Doesn't completely remove it from the possibility of happening, but it needs to make business sense too.
Potentially lease it as a yoga studio. You know?
Why not? It'll be the coolest space around.
So to
Thank you.
cut to the chase for the board, after a number of internal discussions, it is staff's recommendation that we do advance with the base bid project as briefly described. So that's the full build out with the preferred alternate plus the roof replacement and the replacement and relocation of air handler 35. The preferred alternate will help us maximize all that available space between the existing ticketing hall and our canopy without expensive reconfiguration of the back of the house areas where the inline baggage screening equipment is. It also will extend the life of the full building for at least another 20 years in terms of the building system changes. And if we start this project as soon as possible, we'll be able to take advantage of the lower passenger volumes that we have, the fact that passengers are personally choosing not to congregate whenever possible, and also the current construction costs. While current construction costs aren't necessarily low, we know they only get higher. So doing it as soon as possible is going to help us there. In the future, if we do need more capacity in the ticketing hall than what we're building to now, we pretty much maximized what we can do on that existing area. And that would lead the way to us reconfiguring the back of the house spaces and making some more expensive choices back of the house to increase capacity. So we put an estimate of soft costs, assuming that we proceed with a construction manager at risk effort. So we added a 15% design services fee, a flat fee associated with the pre-construction work that the construction manager would do, 10% for PMCM services, as well as a potential 5% owner's contingency. And then we put together a rough estimate on permits and fees, and that takes us to about $18.3 million for the total project. Once again, there are some opportunities still to value engineer. Additionally, there are some opportunities to add some alternates in to get a little bit more work done if the construction costs come in lower than expected. So the proposed timeline for the next steps of this project are shown right here. We've met, planning and engineering has sat down and discussed an accelerated schedule compared to what's in the basis of design report. We believe that the engineering team can get a request for qualifications for a design firm advertised as early as March, the very beginning of March of this coming year. The proposed schedule you see with a design request for qualifications followed by a CMAR request for qualifications would get us to a construction start in early 23, and the construction would be completed before the end of calendar year 23. There is still some additional opportunity to tighten up that schedule even further and potentially accelerate construction, starting it as early as mid-22. And the way to do that would be to advertise for the construction manager before the designer is selected. So there is still an opportunity to tighten it further. We think this is a pretty good schedule, but if the board directs us to move even faster, our engineering team is prepared to go faster than that. And that concludes my presentation. We still have Max Hirschenau here if there's questions on the preferred alternate, but I'm happy to take additional questions regarding next steps or any of the previous decisions.
Can you
Trustee
do the
Carey.
picture one more time of the final layout?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Oh, I like all the pictures.
Here, so this is the proposed floor plan. And just to walk you folks quickly through it, starting at the ticket counters, these would be the airline counters up here. The blue area is the new dedicated queuing space. We are able to significantly increase that blue area by almost 43% in this proposed floor plan. The white area here becomes a flex space that could incorporate anything from additional queuing to additional seating to kiosks. Our primary circulation area is the area in gray. That's a new 15-foot wide corridor. And then the building expands outwards pretty significantly. The posts you see here are the posts holding up the canopy shade structure. And then we end up with bathrooms down here. The consultants threw together a very quick alternate floor plan that extends the airline queue even further if we decide those queuing spaces need to be bigger. There's really no change in terms of construction or design between these two layouts. It's just a slightly different reallocation of space within the existing building.
So the final plan does have bathrooms, because there was a long discussion about whether bathrooms were worth it or not, and they made it in.
Yes, bathrooms did stay in.
Can you show me one more time where they are?
Right over here.
Right there. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Chair Carey.
Thank you.
Just a few comments if I could. This would include the implementation of the wayfinding for passengers from the ticketing to get to the TSA areas and the like. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it will.
And it'll turn the corner all the way. Will it involve just that hallway, or will we do it in the central spine leading to TSA?
The signage would likely stop once you get into the central spine, and unless we chose to keep the signage consistent with the ticketing hall, and there would be an option to do that.
And then could you touch on that feedback we've gotten from the airline partners?
Sure. So the airline partners were involved at a couple of different critical milestones. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, all of those communications were remote communications via Zoom or MS Teams. But they did provide feedback early in the process, near the end of the process, and all of the airlines are supportive of this as an option. There were certain parts of it that they really liked. The additional airline queuing space was attractive to every single one of them. The separation of the airline queues from the circulation area was also extremely attractive to them. There was general agreement on the need for additional restrooms between ticketing and passengers, between the ticketing hall and the checkpoint. And then the area that there was probably the most disagreement on was whether or not the airlines themselves really wanted us to include common use equipment and new kiosks. So that's one of the reasons why those were not shown as a definitive, but something that we could look at further into the future. And then they also provided, as part of our last airline agreement, the airlines, or the signatory airlines, provided in the agreement language that they would support ticketing hall improvements as defined by this study up to $20 million in rates and base charging. So we do have their pre-agreement on proceeding on this project.
And my last, oh, I'm sorry, Darren wanted to comment on that.
No, go ahead, Vice Chair, and then I'll weigh in with some additional feedback for you.
I think one of the things not for this study or to any way discuss this great project that you've built a plan on, but I would like to see us look at the roadway interaction where our passengers are doing their drop-off area. We have quite a bit of congestion around Southwest, and many people are reluctant to use the uncovered area, which lies to the south of Southwest. So just for future planning, if we could look at the adequacy of our drop of our area where people are coming into the terminal. I think that this is a great project for once you're inside the building, but I do want to someday, not urgent or not to slow this down, but to just put it in the queue to talk about the roadway and how we can make that drop-off zone work a little more safely, because we are getting, not now necessarily now, but we do get a lot of the double parking, and that has always been found to lead to accidents. So just a comment on that one. Thank you very much for allowing my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Daniel, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. And I know it was probably the the loudest voice questioning the bathrooms there in the corner being just about 100 feet away from our existing bathrooms. But again, the operations team is seeing it every day. And if you feel that those bathrooms are either overloaded or that this really is better operationally, then not going to stand in your way. So we'll leave that to you to decide. The only comment related to them is also that pinch point that we have there, that portion of the walkway is quite a bit narrower than even the primary walkway. Is there anything we can do to expand that or plan around both the queue for that last airline there, which I think is United off memory, but could be mistaken. Is there anything we can do to open up that pinch point a bit? I think that all guests will be walking through that.
Trustee Farahi, thank you for that comment. You're correct in your recollection. That is United Airlines. And one of the reasons we kept that portion of the hallway as tight as we did is we wanted United Airlines to see some benefits of the expanded airline queue. It didn't seem fair not to allow their queue to expand with the others. We are removing, in order to create that space, as you remember, we're removing the structural braces that are in that area. That's what allows that to open up the way it is. Otherwise, they would have the same kind of brace work that you see right here. The only way for us to really expand this area here will be to potentially take away some of United Airlines' queue. We may be able to find a way with a potential shift, but that bumps them right into Volaris, which has probably been the airline queue that was mentioned the most in the study as having some issues. So that is something we will look at in design. I think all of the internal stakeholders have agreed that we need to look a little bit further into where Volaris is placed and how that creates a bottleneck just based on their passenger lines. So that will be something we will continue to look at. I'll officially make it something that the design team will reevaluate in order to keep the hallway width without negatively impacting United. But thank you for that point. That is something we will carry forward.
Thank you. And just operationally, how does this affect our curbside bag check? Just pushes it out, or they're not concerned with how that will work operationally?
So this area right here in the corner, we've actually, hopefully, we've made it a little bit better for the curbside check. As part of our outreach to the airlines, we did verify that as of the end of the study, none of the other airlines were looking at increasing curbside check-in, but Southwest was hoping to restart it after the pandemic. So we preserved an area here. This is about the exact same square footage they have now, only we're creating a shelter. We're actually giving them a wall on the south side as well as the north side to help protect the employees from that area, but they will have the same queuing area that they currently have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I just have one, Lisa. You talked about there's a way to speed this up, potentially, and maybe we should look at that as a board, just because I do agree with taking advantage of the situation, any situation that we're in as far as a decrease in passenger traffic, because this is the area where, it's probably the most disruption occurs, at the ticketing. So I don't know what we need to do to make that happen. But also I think potentially getting grant funding, that may help us with grant funds as well that are going to be released. So how do we move that up if we could?
Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you. As Alyssa noted here in her schedule, we do have the ability to accelerate the schedule early on here. And there's no board action today, but I was interested to hear if there were any concerns around it. And I'm not hearing any. I want you all to know that I spoke with Nick James earlier this week, the chair of our AAAC committee. Nick remains very supportive of this project moving forward as soon as possible. I think an important lesson was learned by airlines and airports after 9/11 and after the Great Recession, that when we hit difficult times, we don't just shut down or stop our planning and project efforts. This is a great opportunity to move this forward and to take advantage of the lull that we are in, and also position this project to be able to receive other people's money, if you will, as opportunities come up from the new administration or a variety of different bills that we might be able to access for funding here. Right now, we're planning to have the airlines fund it, and of course, they'd be more than happy if we can find other sources to help offset some of their costs. But it is a logical, if you like the presentation from Trish and Hassan, we see ourselves getting back to where we were in 2019, in 2023, 2024, and growing from there. And it's clear we need more space to do that. And this is a great project, perfectly poised from a time perspective. And I'm certainly an advocate for accelerating it. And all I need to know is that generally this board is supportive of that, and you will see board action items in the first half of 2021 to move this forward and award contracts accordingly.
Well,
Madam Chair, I got a comment.
Yes, Trustee Jay.
As everybody knows, ever since the passage of WC1 for the schools, I've been really following all the bids coming in, and I've noticed that our newest project, Wild Creek High School, the bids are coming in. So I did some more research on that. And there's two, and Trustees Sperber and Carrie can certainly chime in if I don't have the correct information, but there's one study I look at called the Turner Construction Index for non-residential. Then I looks at school construction news, and both of them are staying over the last 2 quarters. We've actually seen a decrease in non-residential construction costs by as much as 3%. So kind of chiming in on what you're saying, what CEO Darren just said, are we seeing that? And should we take advantage of, certain projects being canceled, and that's why they're saying they're seeing these decrease in pricing. Should we take advantage of something like that?
And this isn't agendized for action, as our legal counsels reminded me. But if anyone has, it sounds like, Darren, you have the thoughts of the board. Anybody have an objection to fast tracking this? I mean, it's got to come back. Ann's telling me not to ask that. So we'll just have it come back on the agenda, Darren.
Absolutely.
The opportunity, Lissa, for your presentation, and thanks for the update. So really appreciate it. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's move on so we can get staff out of here. I believe I've got it back up. Sorry, guys. We're going to, is it budget? I just had it.
That's correct.
Okay, we'll get the budget presentation. Randall, you're up.
Good morning, Madam Chair of Trustees, CEO Griffin, Randy Carlton, Chief Finance and Administration Officer. Pleasure to be with you this morning. I have a few slides just to give you a high level financial update as to where we are through the end of October. Of course, there's more detailed information available to you in your packet in the October operating statement. I'll just be hitting on a few key metrics here. And then there's a couple of slides with some new information that I'd like to speak to. First key metric, passenger enplanements. We have a budget forecast that we built going into the budget. The green line compared to the black line shows that we're tracking above budget. We know, as indicated earlier, we have a couple of bumpy months ahead of us as we look at December and January, but so far so good in terms of comparing our actual enplanements versus our budget forecast. Operating revenues, another key metric. When we look at how we're doing year to date, we have 4 months of operating revenue, totals about $13.8 million. We are above budget. The represented by the green line there compared to the black line, which is our budgetary forecast. So we are doing better than expected in regards to our revenues, still far off from where we historically were in comparison to last year, approximately 33% down. Operating expenses, the other side of the coin, but the story is very similar in terms of our performance. We are performing below budget. We've spent approximately 13.2 million year to date for the 4 months. That's 11% below budget. We're achieving these savings largely by carrying about 34 vacant positions on the books. And those salary savings are generating a significant amount of the difference between actuals and budgets that you see here, in addition to the furlough and other austerity measures that we've implemented. CARES Act, I want to bring this slide back. You may recall seeing it before, just a high-level overview of the allocation we received through the CARES Act stimulus plan, which provided $30.9 million to be used by Reno and RTS, be used for any legal purpose, as otherwise we would use RTAA airport revenues. There are some strings attached. We've been complying with those, mainly that we retain 90% of our workforce through the end of December. The eligible uses are for payroll, equipment, and to pay our bond debt service. Here's just a review of the numbers. We just recently closed our fiscal year last year, and we utilized a little over $500,000 of the CARES Act allocation. We have factored into the current year budget about $12.9 million of CARES Act to offset our operating expenses. And you could see that we're looking to spend probably the other half of the CARES Act balance in fiscal year 21-22, leaving some capacity there should any of our revenue forecasts not materialize. We have some cushion there in our to rely on our CARES Act funding.
Randy, just a quick question on that. The CARES Act, so we're not under the same restrictions as the other entities where this money has to be spent by the end of the fiscal year?
No.
Okay.
There is.
I did not realize that. That's good news.
Yeah, and it's not a hard-coded requirement, but there is certainly an expectation that we will spend the CARES Act funding within a 4-year period. Okay. There's always the concern that some of us have that if we're not spending it, that Congress can take action to repurpose some of this money. So we do have a plan to utilize the funding over the next 3 years. Okay. All right, a few budget watch items. Some of these things are just reinforcement of what we've been talking about previously. Of course, the COVID pandemic continues to impact our industry. We have our fingers crossed that the rollout of the vaccine and the timing of that will be a positive change, and that we'll see an increase in our travel demand as a result. There is ongoing discussions in Congress and the White House in regards to the next stimulus bill. There were hopes yesterday that both the House and the Senate were on the same page of moving a package forward of about $908 billion that today has not yet materialized in terms of an agreement, but we are closely watching this on a daily basis. Our reserves are holding steady. Our key metric there is a days cash on hand, 493, about the same as where we were last month. As I indicated before, revenues above budget, expenses below budget, both good indicators where we are. There's one thing that I'd like to update the board on, and we have had some recent news with respects to the Hertz DTG bankruptcy. We received an offer for settlement from Hertz. It's a very, I would characterize as a lowball offer, and we have made a counter proposal that is under consideration today. And so the big picture here with Hertz is that the amount outstanding that they owe the authority is $777,000. That includes some recoverable attorney fees that we included in our claim. There are a number of credits on the Hertz and DTG accounts, substantial credits. That's like cash in the bank that technically we owe those organizations, but our hands are tied by the bankruptcy to utilize those credits to offset the liabilities. But they do have credits of about $469,000, and this is as a result of overpayments on the part of Hertz. And what we call the true-up process, where they, at the end of the year, we go back, we close the books, and the amounts that they paid in excess of what they're required to pay in their contract, we refund to them. But since the bankruptcy, we've been hanging on to those, but we're unable to utilize those until we get agreement from Hertz that we could use that to offset what they owe us. A lot said about that, but the net amount, if we are successful in the settlement counter proposal that we submitted today, that we can apply those credits, and if we could receive the net amount of about $300,000 from Hertz, we can call it good and move forward with Hertz and DTG going back to a good standing partner with the airport. So fingers crossed on that. I'm told by the attorney that it's a lot to ask for on the part of the airport. To not get our hopes too high, but we'll definitely keep the board appraised of the situation. Overtime continues to be higher with respect to the fire department when we compare their actual results to budget. And as I've indicated before, this is due to absences, and absences are either excused or they're unexcused. Excused absences are things like vacation or time off related to comp. Unexcused absences are things like sick leave. I'm going to not go any further in terms of the talking point here on overtime, because I want to save that for CEO Griffin, who intends to speak to the fire department overtime situation and some of the managerial changes and controls that we're putting into place in that regard. Just a heads up and what we're looking at over the next few months with regards to the fiscal calendar. In January, we'll be back to the board to present to you our audit of last year's results. I apologize, it's a month late. However, we were addressing some complications with regards to accounting for the CARES Act and the settlement with the airlines, and it took us a month longer than we normally would take. We're also anticipating having a conversation with the board at the retreat at the end of January, where we're going to discuss some of the key assumptions that we're looking at as we build the budget for next year and bring forward some ideas, and we'll welcome the opportunity to hear from the board with respect to some of their ideas, some of your ideas and expectations for next year. In February, Alex Kovacs, the finance budget manager, will be presenting the mid-year budget review and be informing the board of any adjustments to the budget that are needed in the current year. April will be the first look at the budget for next year, and we will bring that forward to the finance committee first. We will have a full board workshop. And then from this preliminary budget, we will take the input from the board. We'll continue to refine our estimates on revenues and expenses and bring back to the finance committee in May a proposed budget that we will be then seeking approval from the board at their May board meeting. So those are the updates from me. I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
And just Darren, procedurally, if you want to address the overtime in your C8 or 6-8, you can do that as well. Public safety update.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions from the board on the budget? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to thank you, Randy, for the update and good job keeping us on track.
It's a team effort.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 6.8, public safety update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll ask Lori to bring up my slides for my monthly update. Got a few items for the board on public safety. So Lori, next slide, please. I wanted to start with really an update on where we're at regarding the vaccine. This is, of course, the talk of the country right now, talk of the world, and we are engaged with the Washoe County Health Department in understanding our place in line, if you will, and understanding who from the airport authority would be eligible for vaccine, early vaccine. And of course, it is our first responders and some potentially key essential employees. And by first responders, we mean police and fire and dispatch. We're having some broader conversations around how they characterize the airport as an essential function and the core jobs that we have that keep us open and operating as a transportation center that supports the entire region. But good lines of, yes, Madam Chair.
Can we add the janitorial staff to that list? I mean, they're frontline workers, or is that done by federal? I mean, I believe we should be giving them the option as well. They want it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ultimately, it's decided by the state and Washoe County, and I'm with you. We're casting as wide a net as we can in terms of who are the essentials that keep us open and operating. And if they are able to be eligible, then we certainly want to get our place in line and move that forward. So I would say that's a fluid discussion. Chief Tongate and Brian Culpin have been on point with the county for us on that. And they seem pretty open to what our needs are. So I'm confident we're going to land in a good place that keeps us in business and gets all the right folks to the right place in line. Of course, we're in tier 1 with the essentials here, but I believe there are 10 steps in the tier. We're somewhere around the 4th step. And as we understand it right now, that puts us around the first week of January based on vaccine being received by the state and then distributed to the various county health departments. I would say that's fluid as well. It could be a little bit sooner than that, but that's generally the time frame we think that they're going to start to see deployment and our ability to get in line. It is the 2-dose that nothing has changed there, and it depends on if we're getting Pfizer or if we're getting Moderna, the amount of time between the doses. It's unclear yet which of those. I think a lot of us are hearing a lot about Pfizer, but you don't know until it actually is presented to you which version of the vaccine is going to be made available to us. It's also important to understand that I think the numbers right now say around 30% of the people that have received the vaccine in the trials experience symptoms, which, fever, cough, body ache, etc. And so as we work through our essential employees and our first responders in receiving the vaccine, we have to do so with an eye towards business continuity, that if we have folks then need to take a day or 2 off, we're prepared to accommodate that through all the various frontline first responder positions and accounting for that through a phasing plan. And that I kind of touched that in the next bullet there. So lastly on this one, it's not mandatory. And so employees can opt out. We will have a process so that we're clear who is receiving the vaccine, who is chosen not to. It's certainly not required. It's getting an experimental use approval from the FDA, hopefully today. So we're now, not in a situation where employees are being told they have to get it. It's a personal choice, like all vaccines are, but it's important we keep track of it. And so that if we have follow-on procedures for those that haven't received it around mask wearing or social distancing, that we are able to implement that as well. So any questions on that piece here? Okay, thank you. I'll certainly keep you updated on that. So fire department overtime analysis, as we discussed last month, there was a number of management actions that we're working on. I wanted to just update you on that. In my mind, it's less of a budget discussion. We did better in October, and I'll show you the slide in just a minute where I think we're within $5,000 of budget. A $5,000 budget item is not a board discussion. That is more the board interest here, I think, is do we have a systemic problem? Do we have management controls in place to deal with managing of overtime? And I wanted to speak to that and just outline the things that we're working on. One of the challenges that we have is that it's a 18 firefighter work group, if you will, 6 firefighters per shift. And your overtime model is built to accommodate occasional sick leave, occasional vacations, short-term medical absences. And we have one absence that is now, I think, in its 19th month due to a medical and a rehabilitation. And an overtime model can't accommodate or plan for absences of that duration. So you start from a baseline where you're spending overtime every month that you didn't expect to, and then other absences begin to stack up on top of that, as Randy alluded to. So one of the things we're doing is we're advertising right now for a firefighter qualification list, which establishes a list for us that we can then interview and hire from to add temporarily a 19th FTE to complete the staffing model. We need 6 firefighters available to work each shift so that we can run overtime closer to what our budget is. And the plan here is that we always have attrition, whether it's a retirement or somebody moves on somewhere else, that provides the opportunity for us to get back down to 18 at some point, likely in the next fiscal year or whenever that is. But this allows us to get that shift filled. So we're moving forward with that action. Chief Tongate and his team are working on developing an overtime forecasting tool. One of the things that we've been looking at as a staff and board are trailing indicators. We're talking about what happened 2 months ago. And it's, from a management perspective, it's better to play offense, if you will, and look forward. Where are we going to be in January and February? Where are the absences that we already know of? And how do we plan for those? And so the chief and our finance team are working together to establish a forecasting tool, which I'm looking forward to helping improve our managerial controls here. And then just, we're being very open with our union, Reno Airport Firefighters Association, on the things that we can do together to help manage the overtime. We're continuing our conversations around our memorandum of understanding of how many firefighters can be off on any given shift. They're working with us on that. I appreciate the partnership on that as a temporary measure. There's a lot of contributing factors here. There's no one silver bullet that I have seen other than just people, being out for a lot of different reasons. We've also talked about reducing the minimum staffing from 5 firefighters per shift to 4. And that's not attractive to pretty much anybody, but it solves the problem. But part of the caution here is that the cure not be worse than the disease. And our firefighter staffing model is there for a reason. There's been a lot of thought put into how many it takes to respond to emergencies and keep our firefighters safe and be in compliance with FAA rules at all times. And so that's not really a road I'm looking for us to go down, but I want you to know there's no stone that is unturned here. We're looking at everything and making sure we do have the right management, supervision, and controls in place. I'm hoping we're making progress here. I'm hoping to kind of give you a final report out on this next month where we can show some of the absences, how they stack up on each other, what's some of the hard data behind what got us into this situation. It's been steadily rising, honestly, for a few years. And so it's important to understand that and then just demonstrate that we've got a good plan going forward and that we will hopefully be closer to budget, and we are in the budget season again, as Randy just talked about. So a lot of scrutiny on, are we budgeting the right amount, and understanding how the contract works and make sure we get the best number in that budget that we possibly can. So a lot of different angles here to look at. Lori, next slide. This is a slide you've been looking at. So you can see the blue line is fire department overtime for the month of October. If you actually look at the numbers, it looks like we budgeted around 19,000 and some, and we came in at 24. So it's a $5,000 budget overage. We were north of $10,000 3 months ago, $12,000 or $13,000 over. So we're making a lot of really good progress. It's people coming back to work from medical leaves, military leaves, COVID impacts behind the group. And I hope to see the blue line almost back on track here in the next month or two. But I wanted to put it in context for you that when we're talking about dollars, I wouldn't have too many $5,000 conversations with the board. When we're talking about management and leadership and managerial controls on all aspects of our financial performance, that's what I'm on the hook for. And I just want you to know that we're making good progress. The team is working very hard on this, and our partnership with Rafa is also solid, and I appreciate their support. Next slide. Any questions on the fire department overtime?
Just want to say, Darren, I want to thank you. We've been in communication with this, and I appreciate the update, and I agree with you. Don't want to be seeing $5,000 expenditures at the board. And I appreciate the contributing factors to this too. And I think the addition of a firefighter, and I think Trustee Carey had actually suggested this. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Carey had suggested this at some time, like a rotator. And the fact that we have had some absences due to, injuries and COVID and people being out sick, which are outside of, quite frankly, anyone's control. So I'm satisfied with your approach to working on this issue, and I don't. I agree with you that we don't need to be bringing it, back to the board. I think you've got a good grasp on it, and I think the additional hire is going to be very helpful as well. So I do just want to thank you for taking the lead on this. I know I've been in your ear on this one, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an absolute worthy debate. When you see a unicorn like that, we veer to that, and it's important that we be able to manage through it. So I appreciate our team's work on that. Next slide, Lori.
Did anyone have, I just want to check, did anyone have any questions, other board members on that? Okay, moving on.
Great, thank you. Last slide here, and this is just a quick update on what I brought to the board last month, which is we're making really great progress on our implementation of our new Tyler computer-aided dispatch and records management. When I reported out to you last month, there was some question over whether we'd be able to stay on schedule because of COVID, working with a software vendor and our own team's challenges around COVID impacts and isolations, and we've managed to work through that. We kept it on schedule. I'm very grateful to the core team folks that are working on this, led by Brent Finster in our AirCom and Captain Mark Jongsma from police. A lot of great work. The go live has happened this week. Employees are operating in the new CAD as we speak, police and fire and AirCom. You dip your toe in the water, and we have done that this week, and we're working through issues that are expected, that are normal. I just can't overstate how impressive it is to be able to pull something like this off in the situation that we're in. The upside here is tremendous for police and fire and our records management systems, our Zoll system inside the firehouse. All of it is going to make a huge progress here as we unroll this CAD and get good at it. So I just wanted the board to hear that good news. In spite of everything, good work is happening inside the organization in terms of advancing our technological capabilities, which ultimately is going to make us just much more effective on the front lines. So good news there. I believe that completes my public safety report. Thank you. Questions?
Any questions from the board? And I think that is our last agenda item. Just one more update. The retreat that we had scheduled for January, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to push that back. I really don't want to have a retreat by Zoom. So I think it's important that that meeting take place with all of us. So because of the situation, I think it's fluid at this point. I would say maybe end of February, you guys, but let's check in on January when we want to have that. I just don't want to have it by Zoom. I think it's kind of pointless. So, Anne?
Madam Chair, there is an agenda item on board comments and requests for future agenda items.
I'm sorry, that was the agenda item I was doing. So any future agenda items, I think Trustee Jay wanted the noise update. We may want to leave that till February, just depending on when we get the if you're going to bring the CONRAC workshop in January. I think just some question for the board, if we bring that back, I was thinking light agenda in January if possible, Darren, and starting the CONRAC discussion at 8 a.m. So we do the CONRAC workshop before the board meeting itself. Does anyone have any objections to that? So I would keep that open for you, Darren, for either January or February, unless the board has an appetite for a separate meeting for the CONRAC discussion. I'm not hearing any objections, so either January or February, it'll be before the board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Do an 8 a.m. start.
Okay.
And we'll serve lunch by Zoom.
It's cheaper that way.
Any other board comments? Oh, happy holidays, you guys. I miss all of you a lot. So
Happy holidays to you all too.
So
Happy holidays, everyone. Stay healthy.
Safe.
Stay safe.
We aren't meeting yet.
Oh,
Public comment.
I'm sorry, Ann. Okay, we've got public comment now.
I would like to thank
Public
Ann
comment.
for always reminding us about the public comment as my public comment.
Oh.
We have no public comments.
All right, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Bon Natale to everybody from Natale.
All right, thank you, Natali. We have a motion from Natali. Do we have a second? Second, Trustee Farahi. All those in favor, you guys, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We don't. We're adjourned. Bye, you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.